This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Respectonomics is joining you this morning. And I say this morning, we always get into this jam because what we're going to talk about is nothing to do with timing. It is the morning here in Canada. And I will say good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Jeremy. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, Sarah's very good at saying good morning, everybody. And I'm here looking at Sarah and saying, no, it's good morning, Sarah. But we're going to be talking this morning under the heading of Respectonomics. My name is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the voice of Respectonomics. And Sarah, of course, Sarah Benton is my co-host. So together we want to explore an idea or a thought that is terribly prevalent in the world of economics and politics and national outcries and so on. And it's that horrible word debt. And most of us, when we hear the word debt, shrivel because we start thinking about the things we should have done, number one. And number two, we start thinking about other people and the debts they've incurred and what are they going to do about them. So it's a pretty messy field. So I hope, Sarah, you won't mind if we talk about debt for a few minutes in this episode. It's called debt, and I've got a little bit of a subheading to it. It's called the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay.
But you know how you adore the Latin origins?
I do.
Yes, I want you to say that with sincerity.
I did.
Did not. But it is interesting that the word debt is made up of two words from Latin, de and habere, and the de means to undo, and the de, the de, if you think of words like deform or deforest, these are words that undo things. They're not creative words, they're destructive words. Look at the word destructive. Right. And so that's the de part of it. The habere means to have. So in actual fact, what you're looking at here in the word debt is it undoes the having, which is a pretty nasty, you can almost hear the axe coming out and saying, well, in that case, you shouldn't do it. And of course, that is when we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. The truth of the matter is a lot of debt in a lot of people's lives, our lives, people, friends, family, and so on. A lot of that debt is what I call good debt. Johan, who's our producer, it was his grandfather who used to talk about good debt and bad debt. And good debt is really no more, no less than taking an advance on future wages or salaries.
Right.
So, I mean, classically, you buy a house for, X, you say that I can pay that over, well, this is your world, and you can pay it off in a 10-year, 15-year period. You're taking advance on your wages. In the meantime, you're able then to house yourself, you're able to house your family, and, of course, you're creating the opportunity to be able to go to work, which then in turn creates the wages. So it's a cycle that's got a lot of goodness to it. I don't think most of us need too much education or thought on bad debt, but I will point out one thing, and that is that debt has definitively changed its perception. If you go back, 50 years or whatever, and you were at the family dinner table on a Sunday night, the word debt never appeared. And if it did, there was a sort of hushed silence, and you were asked not to use that nasty word. And, the subject was dropped. Now debt has become ubiquitous, it has become democratic, it has become universal, and candidly, from an economic point of view, debt is now in a full-blown of its own cycle. You only have to look at governments around the world, whether you look at Canada, United States, Britain, but debt has become the mainstream way in which we run the show. And the danger is that we're running these debts in a way that are to give us results today that we will in fact not be able to pay for. That is where the word bad debt comes in, and I think we can go one step further and call it ugly debt. The problem with debt is that when it's used in that kind of character, it's used in a way that almost takes away our initiative. It becomes like the cotton wool. It becomes that, well, I can't figure it out, so let's just go and borrow the money. And governments are doing that over and over again. Not only is I think, in an injustice to our human initiatives and our human way to deal with things. I think it's deadening. I think it's dampening. I don't think it's a fun place to be. I don't know any country that flexes its muscles and says, "Hey, we are running a huge deficit. Aren't we clever?" I think it's become a sort of, well, because we do. And with that is the whole concept of the concentration of political power, which is a
Mhm.
dangerous, dangerous place for anything to go into. And of course, the debts that we are creating today do become the obligations of the next generation. Now, if those debts are being incurred to build bridges or airports or highways, very physical long-term assets, I can make the case, well, yeah, but that's an obligation for the next generation as well. But a lot of the debt we take on is to satisfy our immediate needs. And one of the biggest problems with the debt world today is that it is inflationary. Because what we're doing is we're putting more money around and available into the system than the actual output has gone up. In your world of real estate, I think you'll agree that the price of real estate has gone up. I don't think the utility of housing has changed at all. I think
No.
it still shelters and it's still a lovely place to live and raise a family and have friends in and so on. That's wonderful. But I don't think the utility value of a residence particularly has changed. And yet the house's value has what, doubled in the last 5 years? Whatever the number is. I mean, you know the numbers better than
Yeah.
I do. But
Right. Maybe not quite double, but we've seen a significant increase.
exactly. And I suspect one of the keys behind that has been, I mean, there are some very mechanical reasons, immigration and so on, but
Yes.
the other issue is still that the supply of money has been increased beyond what in fact the economy would typically produce in terms of new output. So, one of the things I think we have to address in the word debt is to understand that the undoing, the dehabere, the actual what it's taking away from us. And if it's taking from us initiative, if it's taking away from our ability to collude with one another, if in fact we're being turned into these sort of pawns of a political process that doesn't allow us to have individual thinking, to be able to strike out with new ideas and so on, then the debt is ugly. And I think this is not something that will turn itself on a dime, but I do believe, I think Respectonomics says, if you want to maintain the dignity of yourself and the dignity of the nation, then in actual fact, taking the word debt and treating it with more respect would be a very valuable start to undoing the damage that is in place today. Because as my mother would have said, and she was no economist, but she would have said, my dear, it can't go on like this.
It's very true.
I think it is. I think it's fundamental. And I think that if we're going to dilute our identity, then we run the risk of diluting our dignity. And as we do that, we take away from all of the things that we humanly are so capable of doing. So that's the case for the moment. Not to say that debt is bad. This isn't a puritanical sort of Victorian sort of encyclical on what's wrong with debt. It's more to say that when it's not controlled properly, it can get us into trouble. My finest example is yeast. I'm not a baker. I'm not a cook. I can make scrambled eggs. I can do that. I can do a few things. But one thing I know about making cakes and bread and whatever is well, bread particularly, is you add yeast, yes? And the
Yes.
yeast makes the bread rise. Debt makes the economy rise. It's good. But what happens if you put too much yeast in the bread? It actually destroys the structure of the bread itself, of
Right.
the dough. And also, by the way, gives it a very nasty taste. So, too much yeast, too much debt. They go hand in hand. And that is where I will look at you, Sarah, on a debt ridden morning to say, I rest my case.
I love it, Jeremy.
Thank
Uh,
you.
and it's funny if I can just add
Please.
one I think debt has such a tremendous, uh, heavy weight on people,
Mhm.
and I think it's so important for us to be able to talk about it and to also share so that individuals don't feel like they've done something wrong, if you will. I know that a lot of things have
Yep.
choices, but a lot of things we do what we
Right.
need to do or have to do. So I think it's really great that we're providing the opportunity and the space to talk about it from a supportive vantage point and how Respectonomics can help individuals navigate that and support them through the process. So fantastic work for Respectonomics to be doing.
And you'd better sign off with your sign off then. Come on.
I rest my case.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Jeremy.